everybody, and welcome to the June 28th Trips and Traps. I'm Andy Serling, joined by Eric Donovan.
We have 4 races to bring you this week, a little bit of everything, really. We'll start off with 2-year-olds and move to turf a little bit later on, but let's start with the baby race here, going 5 furlongs. We're looking at the 1 Jane of all trades and the 5 Billboard Babe.
I thought this was a little more interesting 2-year-old race than some of the ones that we've seen so far, and it's hard in evaluating 2-year-olds, but one thing we know: 2-year-olds can and frequently do run much, much better with a start into their belt. And I think one of the things you want to look for with horses is any kind of little move. Not necessarily a great performance, but something about the horse that makes you believe it's much better than the final result indicates.
And you'll see up there the 5 Billboard Babe making a 3-wide move. Perhaps that's the type of move you're talking about here. A first-time starter by Johannesburg, who, if things don't work out in the dirt, there's always the turf for.
Absolutely. And this is a Kathy Ritvo-trained horse. The other horse is a Kieran McLaughlin horse named Jane of All Trades. Thought Jane of All Trades also broke a little slowly, lost that position early. Ramon made the move between horses. Somewhat professional. Looked like she had horse. Ultimately, she had none, as Billboard Babe drops back as well. And Billboard Babe will drop out of the picture. Jane of All Trades seems like she got a little discouraged. And I think Ramon realized it somewhat in the stretch, and he's obviously not looking to beat up on her after she's not going to get any part of it. But Kieran McLaughlin's horses will frequently run a lot better their second start.
Well, that's the thing. Any kind of excuse you can give a Kieran McLaughlin first-time starter to play him second time out is usually a good one. And they usually pay fair prices, too. And this horse was down inside taking some dirt, so perhaps she'll move forward second time out. She's also a rock hard 10, so like the Billboard Babe, who's by Johannesburg, you figure maybe turf could be an option, too.
It's possible, and we'll have a lot of turf. We'll have turf sprints as well as turf routes up in Saratoga for 2-year-olds. We'll see. I imagine each one would like to give these horses one more chance to dirt, depending on how strongly they feel about them. I don't know. Billboard Babe was a very big price. Thought she did a little running, and she's the kind of long shot maybe you get some improvement second time out. And Jane of All Trades, I'm really looking for that horse. I think she got discouraged when things didn't go her way, but she did show enough to me earlier in the running that I think she's a lot better in the final result.
Well, you know what? They did pay $100,000 for Billboard Babe as well last year as a yearling. So, and this is a horse owned by the Reeves Thoroughbred Racing, of course,
Mucho
Macho Man. So, perhaps they think this horse has some kind of future. Needs a couple races.
Well, that's the other thing. With Saratoga coming up in a few weeks, there's a lot to be said. The purse is obviously so good, and you do want to win. But if you can get a race under your horse's belt before you get to Saratoga, there have been plenty of expensive, very good 2-year-olds that have lost to more moderate 2-year-olds that have had experience up in Saratoga, and maybe you can get a win with a horse that's not as good, but the experience can make the difference.
Move on now to a turf race here, going 1.25 miles on the inner turf course. This is the 8th race from June 20th, the non-winners 1 allowance optional claimer. Looking at a long shot in here, the 2 Hear the Word.
Yeah, Hear the Word is kind of interesting. Broke okay, doesn't have much speed, and this is a big difference from last time, because last time Hear the Word broke lengths behind the field. And what I liked about this horse, has a good trip, sitting right behind the eventual winner and the favorite, Barochi. And Alan Garcia angles out for room in the stretch, and I think we'll see it take some time to get the momentum. But I think what I liked, Eric, is this horse was going 1.25 miles for the first time, and clearly ran better than he'd been running in the past.
Oh, yeah, this was a big step up for him, too. He'd been running in starter allowances and starter allowance optional claimers. This was his first try in a non-winners of 1. He actually broke his maiden for $35,000 on the turf down at Gulfstream Park. So this was a step up in class and a stretch out in distance, and the result was really quite good.
Yeah, he really comes running at the end. Now, you can argue the race was collapsing a bit at the end, and dynamics played in the horse's favor, and he got a pretty good ride. I thought Alan was a little tentative. He could have stayed in there a little bit more, but I'm not trying to be too picky. It's not a question. It's not a problem in the ride at all. It's that this horse clearly improved going the 1.25 miles, and I don't know how many 1 3/8 turf races I'm sure PJ would like to run more in Saratoga. It's a question of getting him to fill. But this horse, I would love to see this horse going 1 3/8 in Saratoga, because I think he's just a much different horse when he gets to run more ground.
No, I think you're right. And here he's kind of following the eventual winner, the 9 Barochi, who's down on the rail in the blue and just stayed there a bit, and that kind of set off a chain reaction a little bit where Hear the Word steadied a little bit too. But yeah, I think the difference comes at the top of the stretch when Barochi's in a position that he's ready to pounce and make a big move in here, whereas our horse Hear the Word still has to make up some ground and get by some horses.
Yeah, and listen, I happen to like the general thinking that the rider used with Hear the Word, which is, I don't know if my horse is going to want to run inside of horses, and I want to angle to the outside. And as you see him back here, and he's put a little bit of distance between him and Barochi. At this point, you're thinking maybe he's just not good enough, and maybe he just gets outrun. Now, Barochi, who got a terrific ride in this race from Julian Leparoux, he has no problem splitting horses. But Hear the Word, well, he's sort of trying to go inside towards the back right in there, but he's not going to go through on the inside, and I think Alan wants to get him to the outside. Once he does, he actually puts in a decent run here towards the end, and it was a good trip and all that, but we're talking about a 50-to-1 shot. So it's not as though he was expected to be sucking up at the end. He improved.
Yeah, with a few more jumps, he might have been second there as well, too. So clearly a horse that improved with the distance, and we'll see if he goes a mile and 3/8 next time out up at the Spa.
Yeah, I have to imagine that they're looking to get a race with more distance, wherever it is. Hopefully, it'll be in Saratoga. But this is a big step forward. And he's a horse that could even drop down in company a little bit and get into what looks like an easier spot. Yeah. And his price still will be okay. He's a low-profile connections horse.
Might have a little bit of trouble finding that distance, though, at the starter allowance level.
Well, maybe there'll be a mile and 3/16 somewhere for him. We'll see where he shows up, but looking forward to him, hopefully going longer.
All right, let's volley back to the dirt here on a Saturday, a muddy track on Saturday. We're looking at race 3 in New York. Red Nominers 1 for fillies and mares going 6.5 furlongs. A 3 Leaping Lady appeared to be speed in here and did actually get the lead early on before eventually being pressed by the runner-up Allison's Win.
Wanted to show this race, not just because we think Leaping Lady is a horse that can very well win its next start, but also because Saturday was a day with the rain where the rail was dead. And this became known to everybody, I think, after the Mother Goose. Unfortunately, a lot of riders took a long time before they seemed to be aware of it at all. So you saw a number of contenders throughout the day spend too much time on the rail. And we had that dead rail the first full week here of racing, and it's been extremely lucrative betting horses back from it. And we just want people to be attuned to look for horses with inside trips on Saturday's card, which was June 23rd, and you can make some money betting the horses back, and I think nobody more so than Leaping Lady.
Leaping Lady down inside here, getting vied with by Allison's Win, and it's going to set up for Lender's Way in here. And a horse that I was expecting to run well in here, perhaps the error was Jose Lezcano not getting her to the outside earlier on in the race, where she could have been set up and have a little bit better situation here, where either Allison's Win was going to have to go hard to get around her, or Allison's Win was going to have to take back and sit behind her.
Or go inside of her.
Right.
And, listen, it was the third race on Saturday. We're not trying to be hard. It's a lot easier to sit up here, especially in hindsight of seeing the races, and say, all of you who were on the rail should have been off the rail. This is not, listen, he's trying to do the right thing. The point was, if you could turn back the clock, if Jose could get in a time machine and go back to Saturday, he might say, hey, I'm going to get clear with Leaping Lady and get out into the 4 or 5 path and let them come inside of me, sucker them in there, and I think she would have won. Doesn't really matter about any of that. The fact is that this horse was badly compromised by being inside. Still ran gamely, tried to fight back top of the stretch, even though being in that inside position. And Leaping Lady is a horse that I feel confident in this kind of spot, and even maybe a little tougher, will win. Maybe at Saratoga and pay a fair enough price.
Yeah, her maiden win was good. 2 starts back now for her, so if she can rebound to that kind of effort, she'll be tough in a one of that.
Plus, she may not like moisture in the track. So that's the other thing. Her 2 dry track races are both very good. Her wet track race is not as good.
Good point. The last race we'll show you is the 4th race from June 24th, a starter allowance optional claimer for fillies and mares going a mile in the turf. We'll take a look at Yes She Rules, number 4.
I'm not sure how good Yes She Rules is, but I know that she's a horse that wants to make a big run at the end of a race, as she did when she broke her maiden her prior start for trainer Chad Brown. And this was a race that, even though it collapsed a little bit, it wasn't a total accordion effect, and she was never in a position where Rosie DeProfit could ride her in the stretch.
No, down inside behind horses here in the backstretch, just in a fairly decent spot here if things go her way in here. And this is a horse trained by Chad Brown, who's had her issues. She's only making her 3rd start midway through her 4-year-old season. She debuted March of 2011 down at Gulfstream, came back in March of this year down at Gulfstream, and then another 3 months of this race here. So Chad's been real cautious with how she's run.
She's been entered a couple of times, and I think they've been rained off at this meet. I mean, there's been a lot of horses that have had that problem at this meet, as we've lost close to 60 turf races, or maybe even more than 60 turf races as the meet's gone on. Listen, she's no superstar, and these horses are probably a little bit better than her, which is why, in a certain way, I was encouraged by the race she ran, because I thought if she had room and had a fairer trip, it's not that she didn't lose ground or anything, but she seemed to have run, and I just think Rosie just found her in a position where she was just bottled up by horses.
Yeah, still down inside there, and just really going to have a lot of traffic issues in the stretch, and really just not have a chance to ride her to her full ability here.
And I don't think that she was being overly aggressive about staying on the rail, and that was the reason. The problem is this horse doesn't have any speed, so you got to dance to the girl that brought you there, and she
looks to get out there, and then she's covered by 2 horses.
But what is she supposed to do? I mean, you can't listen. You can't just say, well, she's supposed to miraculously find room. The point is, she didn't. Now, this is the spot where if she had been able somehow and she couldn't get out, where maybe this horse could have really picked it up. But you watch her; she's at this point, she's not even riding this horse. She's got nowhere to go, and the horse on her own is actually sort of. You look at the difference between her and the other riders. Horse on its own is carrying her up there. I think that she's okay. She rules, and give her a fair chance at Saratoga, especially in a slightly weaker group, because this was a pretty tough field.
And you see the pitfalls there of having a horse with no speed, because you do get stuck in those positions quite often, and you have to get lucky to A, get a pace, and B, be able to get that clear run in the stretch.
And you also have to be patient enough to wait and hope that happens. And what ends up happening is the rider frequently looks bad through sort of no fault of their own because of the horse that they're riding.
Yep, I agree.
Once again, we love your help. Viewer comments, trips, and traps at NYRANK.com.
Thanks for watching.